Hi, in this video I am going to demonstrate how to make connections in Xcode, which is very important for our projects. So here we have an example project where I have in my storyboard I have my view controller with a view. So you see my view controller, my view. I have a text field, which I'm allowing the user to enter a name, a button, and a label. And I used the library down here with the objects library and dragged them on here and set some properties like the background color just so you could see the distinction between all of them. So now we've created this, but we've done nothing into our code yet. So now I want to actually create connections from our code, from storyboard to our code. So now I'm going to use the assistant editor over here, which is right up here in the upper right hand corner. Click on this. You'll notice the first thing I had was my storyboard selected. So now that I had my storyboard selected, it says, okay, I'm going to try to find what you need here. I'm also going to close out some of these windows just so you can see it a little bit clearer. Okay, so it's showing my USC viewcontroller.m. If it by chance brings up the H first, you can just click above here and pull out the M, because that's where we're going to put it. So for our text field, we need an IB outlet because we need to actually pull this information once the user is done. So I'm going to control, click, drag into our class extension, right where it says private attributes. I'm going to let go. So I held down the control, I clicked with my mouse, and let go when we were right underneath here. So now I'm going to put a name for it. I'm going to say name text field. So that's going to be named for my property. With IB outlets, we always leave the storage as weak. Hit connect. Now it creates a property for me, weak, non-atomic, and an outlet. Here we see it says outlet, and we have a text field, name text field. I also need to have an outlet for my message down here. This is just a label that's going to hold my message. I'm going to click, drag, drop, let go in there, and I'm going to name it message label. Hit connect. Now we have two IB outlets. You can see here from these filled in, see how these circles are then filled in, and then when you hover over them, it shows you in the storyboard what they are connected to. So now we have those ready. For our button, this is an active control. We need an IB action. So what we do here is once again, we control, click, drag, and we put it into the implementation. You can see it says insert action. I'm going to let go and create my method, something like button touched. So this is my, fight on button touched. Different events that we can choose. For buttons, we always choose the touch up inside because that's where the user will move their finger across and then lift up their finger, so it needs to be touch up inside the button. We hit connect. So now we have an IB action. I'm just going to put some extra space there so you can see it. It says IB action is then the return type. We have our method name, button pressed, and then sender is actually going to be the button that actually presses it will be sent in with this parameter sender. So now that we have these, we can actually do something. And one of the things we want to do is when the user clicks on this button, we want to change this message and add their name into it. So the first thing we're going to do, the easiest way, is we need to have access to this message label. Since it's a property, we use self.the property name, message label, autocomplete is filling stuff in for us. I'm hitting tab to complete it. Say message label, and we can do this two different ways. We can either say message label set text, because we have text on it, and then we can pass in a string. So we could say, to start off with, even something just when you click on it, it just says fight on. So this is using method messaging. Here's an example. So now when we go in and run it, you will see we click on the Fight On button and it says Fight On in our message down here, which is great. It hasn't got in this name yet, but we're going to get there next. So now we want to practice just entering a name. So we'll enter a name. For example, my name. I'll click here. When I click Done, the keyboard doesn't go away. When I click anywhere else, the keyboard doesn't go away. So this is something we need to work on. I'm going to stop it right here. That's the stop. And deal with the fact that it needs to go away. So how we do this is we actually create an IB action off of this text field. So usually we create an IB outlet when we want the information, but when we want something to happen, we need to create an outlet, an action. So I'm going to click here and put insert action. But the event that we want is not editing did end. In this case, Xcode is not guessing correctly what we want. We want did end on exit. So we want did end on exit, and it's going to be, what we really want to do is dismiss the keyboard. So button touched, or we'll just say dismiss keyboard, because that's what we want to happen. So when that button is touched, when the done button is touched on the keyboard, which is attached to our text field, we want to dismiss the keyboard. So I created this IB action. You can see here it's attached to this text field. And in this method, I'm going to say whoever calls me, the sender, so that's actually the text field. The sender, what I want to say is resign first responder. And that will let go of the keyboard. It says, okay, you can remove that keyboard. You can let it go. So now if we test it, you will see I will come in here, click my name, and hit done, and it goes away. Perfect. So now that we have that working, let's add in more to our button touched. So now we want to actually add in the name. So we could do something as simple as adding in the name here. But one of the things I want to do is actually create a string for it. So I'm going to create a string for my message. I'm first going to create a local variable. You can create local variables just like we do in other programming languages. And one of the things I want to check is if the name.text field .text.length is greater than 0, then we can add in our name to our message. So then I will say that my message equals NS string Alec init with format. So we're going to use the init with format. I added my string, so now I create my string that I want to say. So we're going to say fight on, comma, and we want to put the person's name. So here's where we use the string formatter. This is the object string formatter right there. And then we pass in our variable that we want to fill in for that specifier. So we are going to say self.name textfield.text. And we're missing some square brackets, so we're going to put those in as well, and now it's all happy. We can format that a little bit different so you can see it a little easier. Now, if the text.length is not greater than 0, which means they haven't entered in anything in the name yet, then we just want our message to equal Fight On. Now, this is the method messaging way of doing this set text. But now I'm going to show you, because it is actually a property, text is a property on our text field, that I'm going to show you the other way, which is the dot notation. So now I'm going to say the dot notation, I can just use the dot notation. Self dot message label, right? We have self dot message label dot text equals, and now I just say, hey, fill it with the message. So if we run this now, you'll see if we don't enter a name, it just says Fight On. If we enter a name, hit the done method, hit Fight On again, it's going to say Fight On Trina. Then it pulled the name from the text field using the IB outlet. One other thing I'm going to add into this is one thing you'll notice when we hit the text field, if we click elsewhere, we want the keyboard to dismiss. It's really nice if we can click elsewhere and have it dismiss. So how we're going to do that is a background button. So now I'm going to go back into this view so you can see it a little bit easier into the regular editor, and not, it's the standard editor versus the assistant editor. So I'm going to search for, down here in my libraries, my objects library, search for a button. I'm going to drag this button. Maybe I'll start it off in this corner. There we go. I want to, and then I'm going to make it the entire width of this view. There you go. The type, I'm going to change the type to custom. It says button right here. That's right here in this title. Let's just delete it so it doesn't say anything. If you hit return, there it goes away. And one other thing we're going to do is we want to make sure that it's in the back. So this button here, and I'm going to rename it over here. In this section over here, you can rename it, and I'm going to rename it background. We want to make sure that it's actually behind everything. So what I'm going to do here is just drag it all the way here, and that will be, it'll do this in order. The layering is in this order right over here. So button, background button, text field button, label. So now that we have this background button, we need to have an action on it. And what we want to do is have an IB action on it such that it dismisses the keyboard. It resigns first responder. Now, before we were attaching the resign first responder to this text field, now we want it to this entire button. I'm going to go back to the assistant editor. And for this background button, you can see that it's selected. I'm going to drag, put it somewhere here, call it background button touched. And it is a button, so we want the touch up inside. We're going to hit connect. There we go. And before, where we could say sender, the sender of this is the button, and the button doesn't own the keyboard. The text field does. So here we have to say self dot name text field resign first responder. Now when we run it, you'll see we click on the text field, the keyboard comes up. Now we can click elsewhere and it goes away, which is great because then we can actually see our message. So once again, I'll just type in my name, hit done. We hit the Fight On and it says Fight On Trina. For your connections, if you ever feel like you made some wrong connections or you tried to rename things and it didn't work correctly, I want to show you that you can always see all your connections. You can see your individual connections for all the different components on your storyboard. by going over here, we're going to make sure that we see this panel over here. And we see our this is our inspector over here. The last option here is your connections inspector. So you can actually see all the different connections. So when I have button clicked, it shows my connection. It says, oh, look it, you have a touch up inside, and there it goes to the background button. And never fear, say I actually deleted it for some reason. So touch up inside background button, I deleted it. I can always drag this here, go back to selecting this, then it's going to pull down a list of all the IB actions. And I can say, hey, I want the background button touched. So it's another way of making connections where you don't have to have the assistant editor open with the code and the storyboard. You can do it all from the storyboard. The storyboard will find the IB outlets and the IB out actions for you. I'm also going to click up here at the view controller, and here is actually where you can see everything. You can see all your outlets. So we created these outlets for our text field and our message label, showing it in alphabetical order. And then here we have our actions. So we have our background button touched, our button touched for our fight on button, and our dismiss keyboard. So you can always check here to make sure that all your connections are correct. If you ever have a connection that is going to an IB action or a method that doesn't exist anymore, you're actually going to see this little like exclamation mark where it says like, I can't find it. And so you can come in here and delete it. And that has actually that will cause people crashes like when they try to run it if you have these connections that should not be there. So that's an explanation of connections in Xcode with the Interface Builder.